Welcome. So today I'm going to show you how to make a spring arrangement using tulips. So just something very simple, and even for people who've never done flower arranging, this would be something that you could copy at home. So what you will need is a container. Now I've chosen this container here, which I did pick up in my suppliers, but you might have something similar. The bowl comes separately, you know what I mean, and then you can attach it into the center of the twig ring. But like if you just have a twig ring yourself, or you might find that your local flower shop might be selling these twig rings, you could just add a plastic container to the center, one of the large posy dishes. As I said, this just came with it. So what I'm going to add to the center of the aluminium container is a frog's leg. So this is called a frog's leg. And to the end of the frog's leg, we have this stuff which is called Oasis Fix. It looks like blue tack, only that it's green. So it comes on a roll separately, and what you do is you break it off about, 1.5 centimeters is plenty. Roll it around in your hands, so a little bit like, kids plasticine. Roll it around in your hands until it's like soft and pliable. Make a little ball for yourself. Stick the ball to the end of the frog's leg, but don't press it down, and then press it firmly into the center of your container. When the Oasis Fix itself goes cold, it goes hard, and it's also waterproof. And what it does, it prevents your block of foam moving around inside your container. So what I have now is a half a block of floral foam. So I'm using the Chrysal brand at the moment, but you can buy a biodegradable brand from Oasis if you would choose to use that. So it's a half a block of Oasis. I've cut off the 4 corners, and I've trimmed around the top, and I've submerged it in water for approximately 100 seconds. I'm now going to place that down on top of the frog's leg and press it down. Now for this particular arrangement, I'm not going to have things coming in sideways, so it's okay for our foam to be that little bit lower. So then, just to secure it in place, I'm just going to put a little bit of anchor tape across it, but to be honest, you probably won't need it, because your Oasis or your foam is down lower in your container, and unless you're transporting it and you feel it's going to move around. But if you're doing this on site yourself for your own home, there's no need to strap it in. So the selection of flowers that I'm going to use today, as I said, are some fresh tulips, and I have these tulips in about 3 days already, so the blooms have just stepped up over the foliage and you can see them all. Now just a few little tips for you when you're treating tulips at home. When you buy them in yourself, if you want to prevent them angling or bending over, if you just wrap them up in a sheet of brown paper, firmly, cut the ends 3 to 4 centimeters off the end, and place them in clean tap water for approximately 1 hour. Then in 1 hour, remove the brown paper, and you will find that your tulips are standing up straight. But personally, I actually like tulips to just kind of bend and just kind of go very natural. And as I said, this particular arrangement is going to be more for just for your own pleasure. It's not necessarily a commercial arrangement. Now in among the tulips, I'm going to add in a little bit of wax flower. This is some wax flower here. So you can see it's going to be kind of multicolored. I have some lysianthus, so some purple lysianthus. And I also have a little bit of limonium or status. This will kind of dry out. So just kind of have a selection of flowers. And then foliage wise, I have a little bit of eucalyptus, and you could use eucalyptus from your own garden. And I also have a little bit of silver Sussex, that way. So just small quantities of foliage, not a huge amount of material. And then I would be hoping, if you're doing this for your own house, that when the flowers are dead, you can just remove the foliage, and then you will be able to reuse your container again. So just with this piece of foliage, which is approximately 40 centimeters in height, I'm just going to place that into the center, and I'm just going to press it down. Now I'm not going to put an awful lot of foliage into this arrangement, and it is going to be an all-round arrangement, so it'll be seen from all sides. So in among that then, I'm going to place my tulips. So I'm picking up, say, my first tulip, and I always prefer to lie my flowers down on the table when I'm picking them up, rather than pulling them out of the container, because you're less likely to break them. So I'm going to take up my first tulip here, and colour-wise it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go for a yellow one. I'm going to cut the end on a slant, that way, and that way you'll find that your stem will submerge or immerse into the foam without actually making a big chunky hole. So in the centre of that foam there, I'm just going to stand up that first tulip, and you can call that your number 1 tulip. This is what's going to give you the height of the arrangement. So now I'm going to take a couple of more tulips. I'm trying not to be too regimental about this. I'm saying 3, but if you decide to just use 2 or use 4, that's absolutely fine. So cut these tulips a little bit shorter, okay? So I'm just taking them a little bit shorter, and if you find that some of the foliage is removed, don't obviously throw it on the floor like I'm doing here, but just remove that foliage and get rid of it. So working my way around my number one, I'm going to place in this tulip, and as you can see, it's kind of on an angle, and can you see the way it's coming away from that centre bloom? And then I have a second tulip, and I'm not like making that they're all exactly the same height, but I do want them lower than our yellow one in the centre. So I just have this second one, I'm just going to place it, and again, just let it angle out from it. And then I have a third one. This is a nice small one. This is going to last that little bit longer. I'm just going to take another little bit off it. And again, I'm just working my way around. So you can see I have 3 in already. So again, you don't have to have a particular number. And I think when you have the little bit of an angle on them, it suits this display. So I purposely wouldn't wrap these tulips to straighten them like I showed you earlier on with the brown paper. But maybe if you're doing a kind of a more regimental arrangement and you would like your tulips to be that little bit straighter, of course you can. So you can see like how that's working out. I just have a couple of blooms just down that little bit lower. And just in among that now at this stage, I'm just going to get some of the silver Sussex. I'm removing any foliage that's at the bottom, and again I'm going in on an angle in amongst the few tulips that I've just put in already. And I might decide even to add in a little bit of the eucalyptus. So again, I have some eucalyptus, just remove any foliage at the bottom, and you can see like none of these pieces are any particular length, and I'm not following any particular pattern. Just kind of keep turning it around as you go on. So now I'm on my next row of flowers. So again, I'm just cutting down a little bit shorter, and I'm working my way down a little bit lower. And again, the angle on these, you can see the way it's just going to let them trail out. I will bring a few more up in a moment, but just to get your overall shape to start off with. So keep turning it around, just cutting these just that little bit shorter, removing any foliage that's at the end if it comes off. But if there's foliage still attached to the stem and you feel that it's secure enough, just leave it on. I actually think like it'll add to this arrangement. I'm not being particular about the colours that I pick up. As I pick up a colour, I'm just adding it in. So again, like don't be kind of like too fussed. Will I add in a red one? Will I add in a yellow one? Will I add in a purple one? Now again, in among that then, I'm just working with a little bit of the eucalyptus and a little bit of the silver Sussex. Now again, you can see I have these cut like random lengths here on the table. Some of them are a little bit longer and some of them are just that little bit shorter, right? There's no particular length and no particular quantity. So again, I'm continuing now, just adding in little bits of foliage, just that little bit lower in among the third row of tulips that I've just added in. Like obviously in between that I'm going to add in some Lysianthus, some waxflower and some Limonium. So now I'm going to work down a little bit lower and I'm going to add in another row of tulips. So again, just cutting them just that little bit shorter, and this time I'm nearly down on the container, just to show you here. So I'm quite low down on the aluminium container. I'm going to do another row of tulips. So again, just turning it around, no particular shape, no particular number. And I would be hoping that anybody that's watching that has never done flower arranging before would feel, oh my God, I would be well able to copy that. If you do have any questions, you can always email us here at the school. Our email address is info@flowerschoolisland.com. And if you just drop us a line, I'll be able to answer you. And if you have any questions or you have any problems, I'll definitely get back to you. So again, just with the tulips, sometimes people ask me to stop the tulips bending over. What about piercing like a pinhead into the stem? I don't recommend doing that, because what you'll find what's inclined to happen there is any bacteria will start to infect the flower, and you will find that the flower will start to go mildewed and will go off that little bit faster. So by the way, I have used up 20 stems of tulips in that arrangement so far, and I just want to add in another 1 or 2 just around this bottom row, and then I'm going to add in an extra little bit of foliage. And now on that bottom row of tulips, I'm just adding in an extra little bit of foliage. So again, the silver Sussex, some of it is a little bit longer, some of it is a little bit shorter, and I'm keeping these pieces kind of like quite low down on the metal container so to help to camouflage it. Now I have another few tulips there, so probably in total I'll be using 25 tulips, and I'm going to bring them up close around my number 1. So remember when I started with our number 1 in the centre, and then I said start working your way down around, you know, keep turning your arrangement around and adding in these extra pieces. But I said don't worry too much about how many flowers or what height you're putting them in, just keep working your way around. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back close to my number 1, just cut a few more tulips, but just keep them just that little bit straighter, you see, and closer to the centre. So it just gives you more impact, like a focal point to the centre of your arrangement. And again, you don't need a particular number of flowers, you know, that way, whatever you feel that it needs. I'm just removing that leaf there. So I'm putting a second one over here quite close to it, and I just think maybe a third one. But again, don't take that as being that you need 3 flowers. If you feel if you're doing this at home and you want to add in 4 flowers, that's absolutely fine. Now I still have 2 flowers left over, so just as I turn the arrangement around, I might add in another one over here, turn it around this way, and I might add another one over here. And I've obviously lots more tulips, and if I want to add them in, I can. But as I said, I have a little bit of filler that I want to add in. So the fillers that I'm going to add in today is a little bit of this purple wax flower. Wax flower is great, it's a great lasting flower, and anybody that's planning on doing bridal work, it's a beautiful flower to add in among your wedding work. So again, it has a little bit of foliage on it, so even though you might look at that stem and say there's very little bloom on it or very little flower, it is a nice filler in your arrangement. So again, I'm just randomly cutting some pieces. I have a piece coming up in the centre, and now I'm just going to start working my way down through the arrangement, just placing these in on an angle or on a slant, coming away from what I would have called my number 1 flower. So again, I'm just continuing turning the arrangement around, adding in our little bits of wax flower. Now again, for anybody who has done commercial flower arranging, maybe with myself or with somebody else, this wouldn't be a strict commercial arrangement. You know what I mean? As I said, this is more like for a hobby arrangement, or for somebody who just has bought a couple of bunches of flowers, bunches of tulips, and just wants to do something for themselves. Like you could use like a plastic posy container, or you could use like a large terracotta pot. If you're using a terracotta pot, maybe line it with plastic, because what you'll find is when you place your floral foam into it, the floral foam will absorb any water, you know what I mean, the terracotta pot will absorb any water coming from your floral foam. So now in among that, so you can see I still have little bits of spaces, but again I'm keeping it nice and loose and like kind of like garden looking. I now have a little bit of their limonium or sea spray. Now sometimes people find with the limonium that there's not the nicest of smells of it. So a little hint is if you get some lavender oil, and if you just mix it with water, so water and lavender oil, and just put it into a spray container, and then just a mister, and then just lightly mist your limonium, you'll find that you get a lovely lavender scent off it. And again, anybody that's in a flower shop, when people come into the shop, then they can actually smell lavender, and they're normally impressed because most people actually like lavender. So you can see the way I'm working around, like random lengths. I'm just kind of like adding this in as a little filler in among it. So it's nice and wild, nice and loose, you know, that way we have a selection of material. And like for anybody that's doing this at home, like you can use things that you like, you know what I mean, that you fancy yourself. Like if you thought that you would like to add a little bit of gyp in and out through that, you could. And normally I don't like to add gyp in among tulips, I just feel that they don't work together, but again, it's personal choice. So now I have a little bit of the Lisianthus. So this is a single flower Lisianthus. It's very light. Again, if you've been watching me before in the past, you probably have seen me using the double Lisianthus. But this is a much lighter one. And again, in among our tulips and in among our wax flower and our status, I'm just going to add in a couple of little single blooms. So I'm just continuing now, adding in some more of the Lisianthus in among the flowers. And like this looks really natural to me. It's like something that would be nearly growing in a planter in your own garden, and that's what we want it to look like. So just adding in a couple more flowers, and you can see some of them I'm leaving that little bit longer. Like we're not kind of keeping this to a strict regimental posy sort of arrangement. I'm adding in some of them a little bit lower down in the arrangement. That's how they come on the stem. And they're quite a good lasting flower. And the great thing about Lisianthus, when you buy it, what you see is what you get. So when you buy it, like the bloom is normally open on the stem. So it's not like a flower that you're buying and you're wondering what will it look like in a couple of days' time. Now this will probably last an awful lot longer than the tulips, but I would be hoping as the tulips die you could remove them and yet you will still have a flower arrangement, because the wax flower and the limonium and the Lisianthus, that's still going to last, and obviously the foliage. So you'll still have like a nice arrangement even when you have removed the tulips. Now my very last thing to do, I'd be happy enough, like say flower wise, with what I have in that arrangement. If you want to continue and add in a lot more you can. But the very last thing I'm going to do is add in some foliage at the very bottom, just around where the aluminium container is, just to camouflage some of my mechanics. Now I don't want to hide the wicker twig completely, but just adding in a few little bits of eucalyptus like down low. Now you will find a turntable is great when you're making these arrangements at home yourself. We do sell the turntables here at the school. They're €35 and you can order them online and we can post them out to you. We can post them abroad. If there's anybody watching from abroad, that's no problem at all. We have posted lots of them abroad. And the turntable is just great because, as you can see, it keeps your arrangement up out of the rubbish. And especially in my case, you know, that way you can just kind of like clean your table. But anybody that's doing this commercially and that's maybe working in a flower shop, you will find when you use a turntable, like, it brings the arrangement more up to eye level. It saves your back as well when you're working, and it just keeps the arrangement up out of the rubbish, really. That would kind of be the main thing. And once you get used to working with a turntable, it's nearly impossible to make this arrangement at home on the flat. So I think just our last piece in here now, just to finish it off. Just have a quick spin around. I'll be happy enough with that. And there's our, you know, typical spring arrangement, nice and natural, ideal for going onto your table as a table display, or even your hall table, or even somebody maybe in a reception, you know, on your reception desk. This would be lovely. I think it's a nice centerpiece, and even to give as a present to somebody. I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, if you have any questions, feel free to email me here at the school at info@flowerschoolisland.com, and make sure to visit our website to see all the rest of our online courses, flowerschoolisland.com. And thanks a million for watching.